this is a pomegranate. And these are apples. If you were to say that this pomegranate was less apple-like than these apples, I would think that would be a bit of a weird thing to say, but I'll say, yeah, you're right. It's definitely a lot less apple-like than the apples by virtue of it not being an apple because it's a pomegranate. So if you would say it's less apple-like or these apples are more apple-like than this pomegranate, I'd be like, yeah, of course, that does make sense because this is a pomegranate and not an apple. But if I was to say that this apple is more appley than this apple, you'd be like, what are you on about? They're all apples. How can this be more appley than that? It doesn't really make much sense. They're all different. They're clearly different apples. Like this one, I think Pink Lady, and that one probably Gala or something. I don't know, but they all definitely look like different apples. But they're definitely all apples. And one isn't more apple-like than another because that is just ridiculous. I don't even know what you mean by that. But if you're going to say that these apples are more appley than this pomegranate, then I'd go along with that by the fact that it's just not an apple. So, of course, it's less appley, whatever that means. So let's associate this back to something like veganism. So there's a lot of people in the vegan movement, outside of the vegan movement, or just talking about veganism in general, where they'll say, you think you're more vegan than other people, or you think that you're an uber vegan. I've heard this word uber vegan spouted about a lot. People saying that, or ultra vegan, or mega vegan, or something like this, or people saying that they think they're more vegan. It doesn't make any sense. How can you be more vegan? Either you're vegan, or you're not vegan. Either you're an apple, or you're a pomegranate. You can't be more appley than another apple because they're all apples. Like, do you know what I mean? Like this might be a smaller apple. It's not less appley though. It's a different. So this is the thing. But when people come along, and this pomegranate comes along and says, "I'm an apple," you see, I don't really look 100% like an apple. I might not be 100%, but we're on the same team actually, because look, I'm a similar shape. I'm sort of round or spherical. And I've sort of like got this like knob thing here where on an apple you sort of got that as well. We're sort of a similar hue, and you've got like a little stalk thing, but I've got this. But don't worry about that. We're sort of like, we're similar enough. We're all apples together. Well, I'm quite appley as well. I'm very appley. I'm not 100% appley, but I'm very appley. I am, as a pomegranate. You'd be like, what are you on about, Mr. Pomegranate? You're not appley at all. You're a pomegranate. What are you on about? So if you've got apples or vegans saying animal exploitation is not acceptable, we don't abuse animals, this is something that we don't participate in, and you've got this pomegranate over here saying I'm a pomegranate, but I'm a very appley pomegranate, and this means that actually I exploit animals, I pay for animal abuse, but I pay for happy animal abuse, and I think that it's actually better if people pay for happy animal abuse, and it's actually better if people try and eat animal products and abuse animals and pay for animal suffering, but just make sure that it's humane animal suffering. Just make sure that it's certified organic grass-fed animal suffering. And that's better because more people will come on board with your message, apples. Apples, what are you doing? What are you doing, apples? You should be ashamed of yourself, apples, saying that it's wrong to exploit animals and it's wrong to abuse animals. What are you doing? You should do what I am doing, because I'm more appley than you are, actually, because the best thing to do, although you care about not exploiting animals, I think you're wrong, because you should actually promote consuming animals, but just ethical, happy, cage-free animals with less suffering. The less suffering animal exploitation is better. And what you're doing, promoting all that abolitionist stuff, you're just going to lose people. People aren't going to be on board with that. So you should actually do what I am doing, because I'm more appley. I know what I'm doing because I'm more appley than you apples over here. It's nonsense. What are you on about? These are apples. You're a pomegranate. Go away, pomegranate. We don't want you, Mr. Pomegranate, because you're not talking about what we're talking about. You've got a different message. You're promoting something different. We're promoting ending animal exploitation, and you're promoting animal exploitation. They're opposite messages. You might think you look like an apple, Mr. Pomegranate, but you're a pomegranate, and we know that. You can't fool us. You can't sneak in to our apple group and think that you're an apple. No, we can see that you're a pomegranate. So be careful, Mr. Pomegranate, or we don't try and infiltrate our group. We're onto you. And so, anyway, there's a lot of people, though, now, in the apple and pomegranate movement saying, no, we should let the Mr. Pomegranate in, because although he's very different from us in terms of what he wants to do, in terms of what he's promoting, they're also sort of similar. It sort of looks similar. So let Mr. Pomegranate in, because Mr. Pomegranate is, I don't know, he's sort of on the same team. He's sort of like, we don't want to pick sides here. We don't want to sort of like push anyone out of the movement. But by letting Mr. Pomegranate in, he's changing what the movement is standing for. And then Mr. Pomegranate is chucking out some of the apples. And before you know it, he's chucked all the apples out. And Mr. Pomegranate is now an apple. So, I hope you like my story of Mr. Pomegranate. Don't let Mr. Pomegranate chuck all the apples out and become an apple. Because pomegranates are not apples.